Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is the Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel, welcome to Total War Warhammer. More of our tournament coverage coming down here. We've got Chomp as the Vampire Counts for round 2 and Dr. Crime as the Empire. On the other side over here we've got a Vampire, Manfred von Karstein, very familiar face for this tournament. We've got 3 Zombies, 2 Skeleton Spearmen, 2 Graveguard, Graveguard with great weapons, 2 Black Knights, 2 units of those Direwolves, 2 Terrorgeists, 2 Vargeists, 1 Terrorgeist rather. I always do get those confused. Versus Balthazar Gelt, 2 Witch Hunters, 2 spearmen with shields, 4 swordsmen, 4 halberdmen, 3 crossbowmen, 2 units of Knights of the Empire, and 1 unit of the Reichsguard. So, something that we haven't really seen very often is Balthazar Gelt, and this is because the lore of metal is a very, very weak lore currently. Not necessarily sure that I agree with the selection. Over on the other side, of course, Manfred von Karstein is an extremely common choice, very, very powerful one. The overall army compositions are pretty interesting in this one, I'd say. Terrorgeists and the Vargeists, that air combo makes it so that if Balthazar Gelt is in the air, he could be in a little bit of trouble. We'll see how that goes for them. Other than that, though, you don't see sort of the Cairn race that you usually see for the undead, and you don't see the Crypt Horrors that you usually see for the undead. So this is a very fairly novel undead list, but I do like it. I do think the Graveguard are extremely underrated against a lot of the factions, the regular old Graveguard being, in my opinion, one of the stronger units out there. Got Direwolves in a sort of forward position here. Got some Empire Knights kind of in a position to catch them out if they don't, if they try and hide behind there too much, but we'll see if those Knights are going to be used for a long-distance flanking force. Now, the Black Knights over on this other side over here, no match whatsoever for the Reichsguard individually, but 2 units could beat a unit of Reichsguard. If the Empire Knights reinforce that, though, the Reichsguard-Empire Knight combo, way more than a match for the Black Knights. Black Knights being weaker than either of them. Looks like the Geists are all sort of heading up in a clump, but they're not air charging right into Balthazar Gelt. Now, it would be a little bit dangerous running straight into Gelt over there just because they've got all these crossbows. They'll have to get some of those guys tied up, but as soon as they get those guys tied up, they could easily run in there. Manfred getting a little bit close to those Witch Hunters, and not only is that accusation a pretty good amount of damage, but their pistols are pretty good at taking down large characters, just like Manfred. Over here, we've got the Knights coming up. I think that they've caught a whiff of these Direwolves over here, so they could very well just... yeah, so this is gonna be... Dogs are just like, oh, yeah, no, this is cool. This is fine. I'm okay with this. Hello. Are they friendly? Oh, no, they're not friendly. Okay, so that's a bit of a mistake. It would have been nice seeing a Fated Bajuna coming down on those Knights, potentially. Seeing the Direwolves running out of that combat, and these crossbowmen have gotten perplexingly out of position, so... yeah, Direwolves, after having taken that, now if this was any sort of other unit, they might have morale broken from that and have been actually killed from this, but in this particular case, since their unbreakable morale is kicking in there, they're getting into those archers pretty well. It's difficult to say what's going to actually stop them at this point in time. There's nothing really in position properly. Now, the nice thing here is there's no artillery line for the Empire, so they're not going to have to worry about defending that. Looks like we're going to see accusations coming down. Knights are finally catching back up to those Direwolves, although, you know, they've lost a unit of crossbowmen or 2 over there already. No accusation coming down. It looks like Manfred's sort of chickening out a little bit. Balthazar Gelt could also charge those guys. I mean, he can actually do that and do a pretty decent job. We're seeing these undead hordes come into the line uncontested here. We're going to have to see if... yeah, it looks like one of the units of Black Knights coming in to charge into the unit of Swordsmen. They're going to get countercharged by the Reichsguard. Going to be a lot of damage against the Swordsmen, but at the same time, those Reichsguard are going to cause a lot more damage in turn. Vargeists coming into the Swordsmen, that's going to be a pretty devastating charge there, although the Manfred charge into there as well is not helping any. Seeing Final Transmutation coming down, getting some damage on all of this stuff here. Vargeist coming in. Accusations yet? Yeah, we've got some accusations on the General finally. The Direwolves have finally been seen off. Those Empire Halberdiers could probably get in here. These Black Knights could definitely get into the fight or something. I'm amazed no one's touching Gelt here. Spirit Leech coming down onto him, finally getting a little bit of damage onto that Empire General, but we're seeing another accusation coming down on Manfred von Karstein. That's going to be a lot of damage here. Black Knights are getting swarmed in by those Empire Knights. The Reichsguard holding up very, very well, despite the fact that they're now fighting spearmen and such. I do believe that Manfred von Karstein is being hit by another accusation there, and is actually going to go down before he can do very much damage to Balthazar Gelt. Balthazar Gelt getting sort of swarmed by these Vargas, if he wants to live, the best choice for him is to pile drive into a unit of zombies or something like that. And once he's on the ground there, that's going to really negate the effectiveness of those Vargas, and also let his ground units protect him while killing those Vargas. They're not very good in a protracted melee, but with the morale sort of down, the Terrorgeist back here just barely doing a bit of damage, but his morale is already crumbling. Graveguard over here doing a great job. If they could just have gotten through this line and into the back of these units back when they had an opportunity, there was a bit of a moment where there's a gap there, they could have definitely done some damage. You're seeing some good shots from the pistols of these Witch Hunters, and they're an excellent unit for picking off these large monsters. Although I prefer firing them obviously at armored targets, they still do huge damage to things like Vargeists, and the Terrorgeist over there probably would also be an excellent target for more accusations in the future. In this point in time, I can't really see a way for the undead to come back into the fight. The Knights still cleaning through things very, very slowly but effectively, and a lot of the undead units are starting to crumble. You've got the Terrorgeist finally coming back in here. Looks like he's going to try charging these Witch Hunters, and he is actually capable of dealing good damage to individual Witch Hunters. Taking an accusation, though, it's going to deal a bit of damage to him, and Vargas coming into support, but he's going to crumble before he can actually get anything done, I would imagine. Knights not really doing anything right now. It would be nice seeing them getting around to the back of this Graveguard, but they're probably going to be fine there. Unit of Black Knights has disentangled it from the fight with those Reichsguard. They're going to probably get an easy time charging into these Empire Knights here if they're not paying attention, but that's difficult to say if that's going to be their target of choice. The Swordsman could also be a good target. Everything piling into that Terrorgeist. It's going to be not long for this world. And this blob over here, like the Graveguard with great weapons, excellent unit, wrong sort of composition. Nothing too heavily armored for them to chop through, so you could have just saved a lot of time and money by getting the regular Graveguard. Much better unit against the generic Empire Infantry, although, of course, it is taking them a long time to chew through them. It would have taken them an even longer time and would have been even more casualties taken for them if they were fighting with the great weapons. So I think that you know, this is not necessarily going to pull through here, and indeed it's disintegrating. Yeah, there we go. That's going to be the whole undead horde gone right there. I think a lot of that hinged on that Manfred not getting at Balthazar Gelt early enough and getting a little bit too close to those Witch Hunters getting killed by those accusations. Definitely an interesting match. I would have liked to have definitely seen Fata Bajuna being used on more things like the Reichsguard here, or something very early on killing Balthazar Gelt. But there goes our first round to Dr. Crime as the Empire versus the Undead there. This is one of our first matches seeing Balthazar Gelt, and indeed probably one of our first matches seeing the Lore of Metal in any significant use. Here we've got Chomp now as the Empire versus Dr. Crime, who is playing as the Orcs over here. Karl Franz, Light Wizard, 4 units of swords, 2 halberds, 4 handgunners, which is quite a few handgunners, 2 Reichsguard Knights, 2 Great Cannons. Then you've got Azeg the Slaughterer, Orc Shaman, 4 units of the Savage Orcs, 4 units of the Black Orcs, 3 units of the Orc Boarboy Biggins, 2 units of the Goblin Wolf Riders. Not necessarily sure that I really like the Orc army here, just because it's quite small. I don't know why you would necessarily need this Orc Shaman in this composition here. I think that having it bulk out the lines would have been a little bit good. By contrast, this Gunline army works really well on Glacial Lake. It's a very good map for it. Alright, we're seeing Black Orcs sort of deployed along both spots here. A very defensive position set up by the Empire, and they're going to get firing away at those cannons. No, this looks like there's a pretty easy way to flank this Empire force, so long as they don't move back with these halberds, and they should be well within the rules there. We've got the Orc force is not really moving up all that rapidly, considering they're already under fire from those cannons. We're seeing some good hits on those Black Orcs, and that's definitely the unit you want to be hitting with all those cannons. I mean, if you're going to pay for 2 units of them, definitely go for it pretty quickly there. Karl Franz back here on his Griffin along with the Light Wizard. On the horse, I would have thought he'd be in the air, but apparently not. This is all going to make it very difficult for Azeg the Slaughterer to sort of move up here. I mean, the best you could really hope for is just a quick Fade Bajuna on the Reichsguard over here, and potentially a Spirit Leech on Karl Franz, but other than that, it's going to be very, very difficult to utilize him here. I think that in this particular case, the Orcs don't really have enough mass to sort of get into the gun line with enough numbers, but if they can silence those handguns quickly and the cannons quickly, then they're going to be relatively okay. Look at the numbers of kills that these cannons have already gotten against those Black Orcs. It's quite significant. If we bring up our stat screen here, we've got 30 on one and 11 on the other, so that's pretty good. This is really ugly looking. Savage Orcs leading the charge into a group of Reiksguard. It's not going to end very well, and the Goblin Wolf Rider Archers sort of getting tangled in that mess as well. The Black Orcs in there, as well as a unit of Orc Boar by Biggins. All of this, like, I don't think that the Orc Boar by Biggins got a charge there, and they got charged in return by Karl Franz, and that's going to deal quite a lot of damage to them. Reiksguard somehow getting out of that without really any damage. The Savage Orcs taking not too much damage, but the Orc Boar by Biggins somehow taking the brunt of that. They're charging forward into too close to the handgunners and halberds, in my opinion, but it's no real other way of doing this. The front lines here getting hit by the net of Ammontok in front of the gun line, and that's going to absolutely shred these 3 units down to nothing. When you've got a gun line like this in the gun formation sort of army, that's going to happen from time to time. Taking pretty much the front line of those orcs out of action. They've still got some Savage Orcs coming in over here, some Black Orcs over here though. Got some Halberdiers coming around the back line to try and protect the units against that. Karl Franz as well looks like he's coming in, as well as the Reiksguard, so that's all coming together. Ooh, we're seeing Fate of Bajuna again on the handgunners, and again, I don't think that handgunners are a great unit for that to target. We are seeing Spirit Leech though on Karl Franz, protecting those cannons, stopping them from getting taken out by those orcs. Halberds coming in to reinforce. The combination of Reiksguard, Karl Franz, and the Halberds is going to be more than enough to deal with that. Swordsmen, on the other hand, going to have a little bit of a hard time with those Black Orcs. Black Orcs are getting pegged in the side by those handgunners, however, so that will help quite a bit. Swordsmen engage with Savage Orcs. Savage Orcs will take that, but they've taken a lot of damage and their morale's not great. Azag coming into a unit of handgunners, but he's going to have to relocate quickly because these handgunners over here turning to fire against him. These Goblin Wolf Rider Archers need to get into these handgunners or something like that, just to anything basically to get rid of them before they can shoot down Azag. Azag, however, charging into this unit of handgunners, that's, or something else, I'm not really 100% sure. Again, Fate of Bajuna on the handgunners, not my favorite target for those. You see it a lot from these players, and I'm not 100% sure why they do it, but it is something we've seen consistently through these matches, is handgunners being targeted by Fate of Bajuna. Yeah, you can see that while it does do good damage to them, it doesn't actually kill any models, and until you kill models from a ranged unit, you're not actually reducing your fighting capability. Karl Franz coming in, taking out Azag the Slaughterer. When you've got Halberd support, it's going to be an easy fight. It's an easy fight regardless, because Karl Franz does outclass Azag the Slaughterer in melee combat, and we're probably going to see him die there. There goes Azag. That's going to pretty much be the orcs done for. There's nothing left, really. Seeing a big green foot, I think is what happened on that unit of handgunners. Not actually that effective. You can see that that killed one handgunner. That was basically right under the foot. Everyone else got knocked around a little, but didn't take any damage. Very, very peculiar how those vortexes are so crap. At this point in time, though, we can see that orcs, for the most part, fleeing off the field in most places. Cannons recrewed, still firing away in whichever blobs they want to, this unit of Black Orcs over there. And that is going to be the end of the game there. So that one was going okay until their general died, at which point everything crumbled. Like, I think they still would have lost. But, I mean, if they'd taken out some key units, really, with those Fate of Bajunas, if they had sort of kept their cavalry, and I don't even know how they could have really won those cavalry fights. I don't know necessarily if they could have. Maybe supported it with the infantry a little bit better, but they're supporting infantry not that great against cavalry. Things like Savage Orcs are just not really what I would use for that purpose. And he didn't really have those units, and typically you don't when you're playing as the Orcs, because you can usually win cavalry to cavalry. Anyhow, let's go into round 3 here. Got Chomp as the Bretonnians over here, Lone Leoncoeur, the Damsel, 4 units of Spearmen at Arms, 2 Polemen at Arms, 3 Peasant Longbowmen, 4 units of Knights of the Realm, 2 units of Pegasus Knights versus Manfred von Karstein, the Necromancer, 5 units of Zombies, 2 units of Graveguard, your sort of typical cheese, 6 units of Karen Wraiths, and 3 units of Black Knights. Now, this doesn't have the Crypt Horrors, which is sort of also a hallmark of the style of army, but I do have to comment that I do think that it's a mistake taking this type of army against Bretonnia. You don't see the counter here necessarily in this list, but the Grail Knights do hard counter this list in a very, very devastating sort of way. I do think that that's one of the best ways to counter these guys is to play as Bretonnia, but even without that, the Damsel does provide 12% magic resistance to all units in the area, and since Karen Wraiths do have a magic-based attack, she reduces the damage dealt by these guys by 12%. You can see that the melee attack and weapon strength of these guys is 24. Combine that with Lone Leoncoeur's and his reduction of all damage in an aura of 12%, and you're looking at the Karen rates dealing about 30 damage instead of 40 on each weapon hit. That's a pretty significant downgrade to the amount of damage that they would normally do. And the Bretonnians just don't have armored units to begin with. Like, you don't need Karen rates to chop through these Bretonnian spearmen at arms. I think that Graveguard are a much smarter choice in this particular case. We're not seeing the Bretonnians doing an air charge against Manfred, and this is another thing that I think is a little bit dangerous, risky here, is seeing this Manfred in the air against Bretonnians. I think that Bretonnians have no problem whatsoever. If you just, like, alright, we're seeing, I think, Fate of Bajuna probably on these Pegasus Knights, but, like, that's on a cooldown now. You can catch up to this guy. He's got 100 speed, your Pegasus Knights have 110. So you can, in fact, just use Fate of Bajuna on a unit of Pegasus Knights, sure, but then those Pegasus Knights can still just charge you. And by the time you get another one, you'll probably have lost Manfred. Seeing a lot of damage coming down on those zombies from the Peasant Bowman. I do believe Lone Leoncourt only has 100, but once he's only got 100 as well. But once you've tied up the enemy general in an air battle with Pegasus Knights, either he can keep running and keep taking damage, or he can stop running and essentially be a little bit better off. Damsel coming in with the Chain Lightning. Yep, Chain Lightning, that's what I like to see as opposed to those Comets. I do think that's a better spell. Pretty good damage, actually, to those Karen rates. Seeing some Pegasus Knights charging into Black Knights, I don't think this is a very cost-effective solution. We're seeing, though, being reinforced by Lone Leoncourt and the other Pegasus Knights, it's going to change that to being quite effective. We're seeing a Fate of Bajuna coming down on the Knights of the Realm. I do think that this is a pretty good target for it. I think the Pegasus Knights as well are actually a pretty good target for it. Knights of the Realm coming in from the back, straight into the backside of those Black Knights, and that's going to crumble them pretty quickly. We're seeing some other Knights of the Realm back here engaged with some Graveguard. I would actually disengage those guys at this point in time. Comet of Casandora coming down on the Karen rates. Manfred coming into the Longbowmen, which is going to actually really wreck them. There's nothing they can do about that. Damsel sort of getting a little bit concerned about the fact that she's right by Manfred. You know, it's not exactly what a damsel's meant to be fighting, but that is what you're fighting sometimes. Pegasus Knights coming back into the air. I think they're going to charge straight into Manfred. Yes, that is indeed what we're seeing. And with Lone Leoncourt sort of also jumping into that, it's going to be a pretty bad time for him. Lone Leoncourt is one of the tougher melee lords in the game, one of my favorite ones out there. Knights of the Realm coming into the back of some Karen rates. Not going to do enough damage, I suspect. Looks like they're going to have a hard time keeping... Is he dead? Is he dead? Not 100% sure if this is a dead Manfred von Karstein. Looks like it is. Oh, those arrows are going to cause that last bit of crumbling to cause him to fall to his death there. There goes Manfred. This is going to free up Lone Leoncourt. I think we got some summoned zombies somewhere as well, but maybe not, maybe not. Necromancer is still alive, and he is very much free. I would love to see him being targeted here. Bretonnian front line crumbling just a little bit. We've got some Knights of the Realm fleeing as well. Going to be interesting to see what happens when Lone Leoncourt gets back, because he's sort of off fighting some Black Knights over here along with his Knights of the Realm. Is this another Comet? I hope it's not another Comet. It's a Lightning Bolt. It's a pretty cheap spell, but it doesn't do a whole lot against things like Karen Rates. We are seeing a breakthrough of that Bretonnian line here. That center being open means that they could be getting into these Peasant Bowmen pretty easily, as well as into the back of these remaining Bretonnian units. And this is coming down a little bit closer, actually, considering the Undead General is already dead, but got some Pegasus Knights coming in as reinforcements, swooping in to sort of help here. We still are seeing the Necromancer, though, go completely unscathed. It's a very, very vulnerable target here, all by himself. Lady, the Damsel Bretonnia is sort of running into combat with the Karen Wraiths, a little bit of an odd choice. She doesn't really do any melee damage, so it's not exactly ideal there. Taking a lot of damage, these Karen Wraiths. Graveguard running into assist, and they're going to be able to bog down Lone Leoncourt, but not being armor-piercing themselves, they're not exactly that good at defeating Lone Leoncourt. Not 100% sure, but I do think that the Undead are probably losing this. What they really need to do is, like, if they keep their Necromancer alive and well, if he does the important things, then this is going to go pretty well for them. Got some Bretonnian units starting to rally around the map here, but I mean, the thing is, the Karen Wraiths don't do too well against a regenerating Lord like Lone Lancor, when he can just sort of come and Goomba Stomp a bunch of them, deal a whole bunch of damage, get out, heal back all the damage immediately, and do that over and over again sort of thing. One of the units of Karen Wraiths is actually probably going to be out of the fight at this point in time, so that's going to be awkward for them. Necromancer coming back. Is he going to try and bring them? Well, it's too late now to bring those guys back into the fight. Over here, though, we've got a bit of a blob forming, fighting a couple of Pegasus Knights and Knights of the Realm. Not very many of them left, but they're doing a good last stand there. Lone Lancor finally coming after that Necromancer. I hope so. I hope so. Alright, so we're seeing some damage coming down. Looks like everyone is piling in on that poor Necromancer, and finally going to get rid of him. This is going to really make a big impact on the way that this undead army functions. These Karen Wraiths can't keep fighting fights without a Necromancer around, not only because he provides a significant amount of morale to them, but also for the magic that he provides, bringing them back to life, keeping them in the fight indefinitely, essentially. And with him down, it's going to be a big morale blow to the undead. We are seeing the remaining Bretonnians over here sort of crumbling out of the fight, but the question isn't whether or not your peasants can win the fight for you as Bretonia, it's whether or not King Lone Lancor and the Knights can, and at this point in time I don't think there's anything left in the undead roster that can really hurt Lone Lancor, and certainly nothing that can kill the Knights fast enough. I think the Damsel is still in the fight, yeah, her aura should still be providing protection to the King as well as to the other knightly units around there, and you are starting to see the disintegration of these undead forces here. Yeah, definitely do think this was a bit of a mixed bag in terms of composition. Yeah, I mean, the Karen Wraiths can beat the peasant units, but not cost-effectively compared to other units. And, I mean, if you don't beat those guys decisively enough, necessarily, you're going to be in trouble when it comes to the remainder of the fight. And this does come pretty close, though. I do think that this was a lot closer than I was anticipating. I was thinking that the Bretonnians would be able to probably beat this a lot more easily than they ended up doing so, but at this point in time it is a done deal. The Bretonnians have won this one. And you can see here, Lone Lancor basically full health. I mean, he's taking a little bit of damage probably from friendly fire and so on and so forth, but the undead here just don't have anything on the field that can really contend with him. Karen Wraiths in the back over here, they're going to have to be, they're busy chasing some spearmen off the table edge, but at this point in time, I do think that that is going to constitute a victory. There we go. So that round going to Chomp with the Bretonnians. A pretty good try from the Undead. I just think that one was a compositional one. I think that the last two, in fact, have come down a little bit to composition and just that luck of the draw and what your opponent's going to take, getting countered, that sort of element to it. Here we've got Chomp with the Greenskins as like the Slaughterer, 4 units of boys, 2 units of big guns, 2 of the Black Orcs, 3 units of Error Boys, 6 units of those Goblin Wolf Riders, the maximum you're allowed to take them, and the Arachnarok Spider versus the Bretonnians here. Lone Lancor, a Paladin, 5 units of the Spearmen at Arms, 4 units of the Polearms at Arms, 3 of the Peasant Bowmen, 2 Knights of the Realm, 2 of the Pegasus Knights, and the Bretonnian Trebuchet. And this one's on Bloodpine Woods. It's a map that I think I like. The last 2 maps I've set up were ones that I thought had good varied terrain that sort of forced players to fight in one way or another. Bloodpine Woods and Hellfen, I think both have a good diversity of different ways that you can fight. So that's why those are the latter ones. Seeing some Wolf Riders a little bit too close to the Bretonnian lines, getting chased away immediately, so they're going to run off. Looks like the Bretonnians have decided to go for a bit of a defensive setup here, having that catapult on their side after all. Now, the Orcs do not have a real lack of shooting in their own army, but they have definitely got a good melee rush there with a lot of boys, a lot of big guns, and the Black Orcs, which are a little bit difficult for Bretonnia to deal with. The Arachnarok Spider is going to be a real pain for the Bretonnians to deal with. Again, we're not seeing the Bretonnians air rushing the Lord here. It's not necessarily the best idea in this case, just because there's Orc Error Boys here in enough number to give the Pegasus Knights a little bit of trouble, but they're heavily armored enough that they're not going to take huge damage or anything from that. I mean, this is the thing, if you've got air superiority and you're against an army that can't easily shoot your air units out of the sky, you could just rush the enemy general and probably kill him. Now, he is coming forward probably for a Fate of Bajuna. Oh, okay, stop him, alright. But yeah, like Fate of Bajuna, just popping that on the Pegasus Knights is a good way to get rid of them. Bretonnians have left a lot of their sort of missile units quite vulnerable, and you can see these Goblin Wolf Riders are trying to make the best of that. The best way to protect this is to keep your lines very, very close to these shooting units so that anything trying to get to them is going to basically suffer quite badly. Seeing Fate of Bajuna coming down on a unit of Pegasus Knights, and again we're seeing people running away with those Pegasus Knights. He can only Fate of Bajuna once, and he's going to get it off. You might as well charge into the general for having the audacity to get close enough to do that. That's always what I would recommend in that particular situation. Wolf Riders are coming in a long arc. The catapults over here are very, very vulnerable at this point in time. They've gotten a decent number of kills, 14 of them, pretty decent units that I think that they've been hitting, things like Black Orcs, but it's not really going to be enough. You've got the Orcs running into the forest here to try and get a bit of cover against those shots there. Now, like, at this point in time, these Fate of Bajuna is coming back up pretty soon. Like, Azeg's going to have Fate of Bajuna back up and running in probably another 10 seconds or something like that. So like, putting them close afterwards is probably a bad idea. We got them charging into these Goblin Wolf Riders, dealing some damage to them, but they're not really the type of unit that can stop that. We've got some Knights of the Realm running around here, and some more Pegasus Knights running around here, dealing with more of these Goblin Wolf Riders. But this is leaving the backline of the Bretonnians pretty open and vulnerable. These Spearmen at Arms chasing these Goblin Wolf Riders, trying to engage with them. Yeah, seeing another Fate of Bajuna coming down on those Pegasus Knights, exactly as I was saying. If you're gonna get these guys exposed, have them far up enough. Like, if you don't want to get Fate of Bajuna, keep them way, way back here so that if he tries to get at them, you can at least fire at him with your units over here. But when you're doing it the way you're doing it, you're just gonna get a Fate of Bajuna, run away a little bit, and then sort of bring them back up into the fight. And then you're just going to get Fate of Bajuna again. I mean, it doesn't really make sense to do it that way. Are seeing one of the Goblin Wolf Riders break from combat there. We're seeing, however, the Field Trebuchet getting tied up, pretty much wrecked. We are seeing as well, though, these Goblin Wolf Riders not doing too well. These ones get outright just charged by a unit of Knights of the Realm, and that's going to be the end of those guys. Arrows from the Orcs pouring out of the forest. They are outclassed in some ways by the Bretonnian archers, but they've got the forest cover there. They've got a better time. Going to see Azeg the Slaughterer quite probably just charge straight into the midst of those archers, or perhaps not. It's hard to tell sometimes what people are doing. Finally seeing the Goblin Wolf Riders, but the damage is done. The Trebuchet is gone from the field, and that was one of the few units that could actually deal good damage to the Arachnarok Spider, so it's going to be sorely missed from this Bretonnian list here. Bretonnians are taking hits to their halberdiers at this corner, and that's going to cause them to be a very, very pivotal weak point. I think that you needed a unit behind that one to sort of layer things up. Got Lowen Leoncourt probably heading for Azeg the Slaughterer, it looks like, finally getting that air advantage into play. Like, this should have been going on from the start of the game, not now, and he should be supported by a unit of Pegasus Knights potentially, although, you know, it's difficult to say who's going to win this. Lowen Leoncourt is dominating compared to Azeg the Slaughterer, but he is being shot at. He is getting spirit leeched by Azeg over here. Azeg putting up Wa and all those other buffs there, standing ground. Arachnarok Spider just chewing straight through units. There's nothing really in the way to stop them. I mean, the unit that was there to stop them had already broken. Orcs are pouring through that center line. This is going to cause the Bretonnian lines to waver very, very quickly here. Looks like Lowen Leoncourt getting spirit leeched again is my guess. Yep. That is another Spirit Leech on him, and he's coming down to try and fight the Arachnarok Spider potentially, or maybe not. Difficult to say. Arachnarok getting free reign in the backline, and that is going to be game over for the Bretonnians. Even if they sort of pull through somewhere else, pull through something amazing, they got a bit of a charge from into these Arrow Boys, for example, it's not going to be enough to turn the tide of this battle here. They just didn't act decisively enough with some of the advantages that they had. Azeg definitely should be dead by now. There's no reason for him to still be alive. Got Pegasus Knights over in the background over here, and they're not really doing anything. Kind of interesting, that. But yeah, I mean, if you're playing against Orcs, just don't be afraid of Azeg. Just run all your air units into him, and either the Orcs will have to rush you in a bad position at a bad time, or he'll get killed. And by the time, you know, they've shot Lowen Leoncourt to death with their non-armor-piercing bows, it's probably going to be way too late for Azeg the Slaughterer there. We are seeing Azeg getting charged yet again by Lowen Leoncourt. It's going to be too late this time, I suspect. Pretty good damage coming down onto Azeg, but Azeg's doing a pretty okay job back. Part of it's because the Lowen's on the Pegasus, whereas Azeg is on the the Wyvern, which is a little bit of a better mount. Some breakthroughs for the Bretonnians, but it's really not going to be enough. There's too many orc units still on the field. The Arachnarok Spider still in the background, chomping its way through things. Basically, just not going to have any problems whatsoever. Lone Lane Corps taking another Spirit Leech. Like, either you stick to the general and just accept that you're possibly going to lose your general in return, or you just keep him so far away that he can't be Spirit Leeched. You don't keep him within Spirit Leech range, not fighting him in melee combat. That's just the worst of both worlds, and that's sort of what happens here. Lone Lane Corps retreating from the field here. These Pegasus Knights really could have done something by now. Like, they could finish Azag off by themselves at this point in time. Yeah, it looks like we're in the wrap-up phase. Bit of a disappointing finale to this bracket, but I mean, it's one of those ones where you probably looked at the enemy's composition there and you just sort of froze up and didn't really know what to do with the units that you had there. I think that Bretonnia could have actually won this one if they had sort of managed things a little bit differently, and if they had killed Azag quite early, and they definitely had the tools to kill Azag very early. Not what we saw happening here. Not really what ended up going on. Lone Lane Corps coming back into the fight, then running back away from the fight. We still don't see these. I'm wondering if these Pegasus Knights were actually dead in the actual game and the replay is corrupted. No, here they come. Very last minute there. But it's going to be way too late. There's no reason at this point in time for them to come back in, and they agree with me there. So that definitely was a little bit anticlimactic, but it's not the finals, so we'll see how those go once we get to there. I just think that, like, the Bretonnians do have a hard time dealing with things like the Arachnarok Spider. Things like Men-at-Arms with the polearms as a second line behind your Spear-Men-at-Arms actually do a good job of dealing with it, but you have to make sure that they're in good order when they're attacking it, and you need like 2 units simultaneously attacking it to make any sort of impression there. Other than that, like, they just didn't really do anything to protect their backlines against these Goblin Wolf Riders, and that really came around to bite them. The front lines would have buckled and been crushed eventually by these Orc boys regardless. There's nothing they could have done about that, but they most certainly could have killed Azag the Slaughterer, and if that had happened early on, then the Bretonnians would have had an easy time cleaning their way through the Orcish army. Interesting fights. Goes to Chomp in a 3-1 victory. So I hope you found this video enjoyable, and of course, as always, I hope to see you all next time.